You guys, there are so many language myths that I wish I could have known before starting out on my language journey, and 7 that I think are the most important and what I get to share with you in this video. I am a native English speaker, but a C2 self-taught non-native German speaker. There have been a lot of misconceptions that, had I known about them, it would have made the language learning process a lot more enjoyable in the end. Because I'm guessing that's why a lot of us are here, is to make language learning fit into our lives and give us joy, even though language learning itself can easily turn into sources of stress and a lot of unnecessary suffering on our parts. Myth number 1 is language learning is a linear process. I know you guys have heard this before, but we're going to go deeper into it in this video and what we can actually think about instead, and how thinking differently about learning is actually going to benefit our motivation and compassion towards ourselves when we do get frustrated. Yes, the word learning itself. Once you do start a language and you get into all of the textbooks and apps that have all of these progress meters and streaks, it feels like a linear process, and it is really helpful to think about language learning in those ways sometimes, but it can definitely go overboard. There comes a point where we've been learning languages for a while, we're used to making that rapid progress, that learning starts to feel like 1 step forward, 2 steps back. One day you understand everything, the next day you feel like you are stupid and you understand nothing. And once you start placing those expectations on yourself to not forget anything or always do this next thing in language learning perfect because you technically already learned it in a previous chapter, all of this pressure that we start putting on ourselves, it can really feel discouraging. When we were thinking more linear, it got us successfully to where we are now, and now it's not working. Or we may have lost interest or are bored. I want to remind all of us of the truth. Language learning is not linear because you are not linear as a human being. You're made up of so much more than just languages. You have so many multi-passionate desires and wants and needs that can change from season to month to even minute to minute. And it is totally normal for you that what might have worked for you like 2 months ago stops working for you now. What I want you to think about instead is thinking in cycles, not a linear line. For example, with a method, it might have worked at one point, but now we find ourselves wanting or needing to give it up. If we are thinking more in cycles, we know we're thinking in abundance. Yes, that method is not going to be what's working for me right now. I can come back to it in the future, in a circle, instead of choosing to blame ourselves when we are thinking more linear, saying, why don't I ever stick with something? Why is this not working? I'm such a quitter and discouraged. Another thing I want us to remember is we all slip in and out of these 3 big cycles that I love to call the mindful multilingual stages. No matter how experienced or how beginner you are in language learning, everyone is going to have to touch all 3 of these stages repeatedly at some point in their learning. Restorative rest, rapid growth, and steady progress. For example, if you know probably someone is in a stage of rapid growth in their language acquisition, they've posted videos or they've talked to you in person about learning a language in a year, in 3 months. Eventually that rapid growth, no matter how long or short it lasts for us, will slip into either steady progress or restorative rest. There have been some points in my language learning where I feel really invigorated, but also really burnt out from learning a language fast. When I was learning Russian, after 3 months learning it every single day, I went into restorative rest with that particular language and I let it lay dormant while I busied myself with other areas of my life that I could get meaning from instead of just from language learning. Rapid growth can also turn into steady progress when you just maintain your language or when you are at a stage of the intermediate plateau. I feel like in restorative rest, you have more of an intention of letting a language go or just letting it kind of play in the background without prioritizing it for now. Rapid growth, you are seeing the results visibly and so are other people around you. Steady progress, it's harder to see those results sometimes and we can get really down on ourselves as well, probably the most often in this stage. But know that nothing is permanent. We are all changing. It is all in a cycle. It's not like after you pass a period of rapid growth and you feel in your body that you have to go back to restorative rest. That's okay. That doesn't mean that you're not going to ever hit rapid growth again. Another myth is high language proficiency and or the number of languages that you speak. Once you attain that number, that'll guarantee you language confidence. Now, focusing on big dreams and aspirations is a wonderful thing. Seeing people speak their fastest and their best, but again, we are narrowing what we are really defining as language learning confidence. And if you are waiting for that big milestone, I want you to know you can access language learning confidence at whatever stage you are in, even when you're not actively studying languages. You don't just have to wait for everything to be perfect after you hit that milestone. Life is happening right now, you guys. For example, if you are at the intermediate stage, instead of saying, "Why am I not moving fast enough?" use curiosity. It is a great healer for many things in our lives and for our wellness. And say instead, "I wonder why I'm dissatisfied with the pace that I am naturally going at. Where can I get support for that?" Besides using curiosity and really talking like a friend to yourself, essentially, another way to access confidence at any stage is broaden your definition of confidence. You believe that your definition of confidence is as valuable as other people's definitions of confidence that they're showing all over the internet, is acting on behalf of your true needs and desires as a whole human being, not just as a language learner. Instead of acting on behalf of what someone else says is confidence. Now, finding out who your authentic self is behind your languages is an entirely different video, and that is what I love helping language learners out with, is their confidence through finding more of their authentic self. Go into the comments and check out my coaching program that I use especially for this to sign up. In order to just start out and broaden your definition of confidence, really take a step back and think about what brings you joy in your language learning. There will be certain things that line up with what you see others doing. Talking to native speakers really does give you confidence, or talking on camera in another language. That is what we see around us all the time. And that's why there's such a big pedestal speaking a language online, because it's the most tangible thing that we can show someone immediately and have it be entertaining. I bet because you are a human being and you have so many other gifts and interests to share with the world, that there are going to be things that bring you joy in language learning that are not shown, that are not visible from someone else's perspective. For example, reading a book and concentrating on your comprehension, choosing not to speak from day one in a language. This is actually what I did in both German and Italian. I waited 7 months to not speak at all. After I started watching all of these other experts talking about how it's really effective to speak from day one, I still looked back and knew I was acting on my own behalf. I was listening to myself as an introvert and wanting to feel safe in starting a very new and scary thing like learning a language for the first time. And that benefited me more than what an expert's advice could have done. Another example that you might resonate with is that you actually really do enjoy listening to the news or your favorite media in your native language. I know that there is, for example, a lot of advice to always use your free time to learn a language or immerse in a language. We have different energy levels, and putting pressure on yourself doing that, thinking everyone else is going to have all the energy in the world to do the same thing to get ahead in their language learning, that's simply not the case. And choosing to go against the grain and act on behalf of your authentic self and what your authentic self needs, aka rest in this example, is the best thing that you could really do for your own confidence. You can see a lot of these examples. I was giving ways to set boundaries with myself, especially when we are constantly bombarded by all of these sometimes subconscious, sometimes very conscious expectations on how we should be and show up in our languages as worthy language learners. So I really want you to give a thought to how you are setting your boundaries for yourself and for others in learning, and maybe how you need to tweak them, access a little bit more confidence, even this week. Now, speaking of confidence, we also need to talk about the myth of speed in reaching your fluency goals. Because another myth is that learning a language fast is going to guarantee your confidence and long-term success. Know that getting what you want quickly does have downsides. Specifically, you do not cultivate the skills and the experience that it takes to maintain whatever success or milestone that you hit really fast. Now, success can mean a lot of things. For example, when you learn Spanish in 6 months, yes, you get success in attaining a language acquisition level that you feel proud of in the moment. But the mindset for maintaining this confidence at that level in the long term is crucial for your emotional wellness as a language learner. There's lots of misconceptions about what we actually mean and what we are omitting a lot of when we say you need the right mindset for language learning. In reality, the mindset to guarantee your true sustainable success in reaching fluency in your language is made up of 2 parts. The first part, and this is the most preached about by a lot of people that I already know in the language learning communities I follow, it's telling yourself, I've got this, I'm confident in myself. because I did this and this with X languages. I'm always going to stay on top of the newest strategies and always measuring my success in order to track my progress. I've just got to be adaptable. Part number 1 is definitely important, but we are often such a metrics and goals driven society that we forget that the second part of a successful language learning mindset is checking in with our emotional wellness, especially during the really hard parts in our journey where we do get overwhelmed by our emotions and we need self-compassion the most. We don't know how to give it to ourselves properly and really check in. Look first at how you are talking to yourself about your language learning. I always invite people to actively not practice saying things like, I reached language fluency in Spanish in 6 months. Why can I not do that with French? I am such a failure and I don't understand. But instead, you get curious, which offers you a little bit more compassion to yourself when you say, I wonder what's really going on and why I'm so upset about not getting what I think I want. Where can I find support to dig deeper about this? Not checking in with our emotional wellness side of what it takes to sustain a successful language mindset, even after reaching all the big and small milestones, is what ultimately makes even the most experienced language learners' mental health worsen, and it's a big hole to crawl back out of, as I mentioned in my How I Learned Spanish Fast video in the description that you can check out after this video. Remember, when we want fluency, we really want confidence and proof to ourselves that we are doing really well in what we set our minds to and what our passions are. And confidence is not guaranteed by any one thing. It is always combined multiple things that come from our emotions, desires, changing seasons in our lives, amongst all the language learning tips and acquisition methods. It's an easy trap to think that language fluency will get us to confidence because we are so focused on the external goal outside of ourselves, and it is totally easy to abandon the emotional side of our needs all in the process. Another myth is that this teacher, method, strategy is certainly going to solve all my problems to become fluent. Again, we tend to think in binary terms as human beings, and that's useful, but when it comes to complex situations and frustrations, emotions that we typically feel while we're learning languages, binary thinking does not serve us at all and just adds more pressure, also known as thinking in an all or nothing way about our learning. The fact is, there is really no such thing as certainty. Even if we are certain about something, as I said before, we underestimate how much we change even within the hour, within the month, within years. We are desperate for certainty because we're desperate for control about a situation that we actually really can't control that much. Controlling if this is the strategy or this is the teacher to speed up our progress to fit our standards of what we think learning fast or learning however should look like. Know that if you do feel certain about something, that's okay. But what you feel certain about will change. And just because it does change does not mean you are a wrong or bad person for sticking with something that worked at first that ultimately you wanted to let go of in this ever-changing cycle that you are in as a human. Another myth that I don't think we talk about often is thinking that we need balance in our life and our language learning to reach fluency goals and otherwise feel better about our learning in general. Of course, there's no such thing as balance, and I am guilty of using that word too, but it really communicates how we as humans try to checklist things off so well in order to, again, gain control. When you say you want balance, what you really want is self-trust so that you can create what I call unbalanced joy. So when we say we want balance, what we're really saying is we want to be present in the moment. If we feel chaotic and overwhelmed because life is all chaotic around us, all of that makes it harder to actually listen to yourself and tap more into your own intuition about what you want to do. Going from a place of overwhelmed to feeling balanced and present, aka reaching unbalanced joy, looks like calming ourselves down enough, either through deep breathing, taking a walk to clear our head, getting out and changing our physical space that we're in, etc. After we calm our physical bodies down enough, we can then get more curious about what to do next. And when you genuinely ask yourself, what do I genuinely want to reach unbalanced joy, as I call it? Most of the time you already know the answer about what to do, but your next step is to trust yourself and actually believe your answer. Easier said than done, but that is the key to living what I hear a lot of language learners refer to as balance. Ultimately, you're open and expecting a little bit of chaos, maybe a lot of change at some point in your life, but you have self-trust enough to access and trust your intuition plus that joy that really brings you into the moment and gives you the balanced feeling that you're seeking. Another myth in language learning is that fluency is the best goal to make for your language learning. And of course, fluency is not the best thing to aim for. Really, in our language learning, nothing is objectively. The best thing to aim for is ultimately what lights you up in your language studies, and that's ultimately how you're going to make all of this journey more healthy, more sustainable for yourself. Mental wellness is highly individualized. Only you know best what lights you up, and while I don't exactly know what'll do the trick for you because of that, I do know that not everyone wants to be fluent in a language. Not everyone will find it all that necessary or important or relevant to them. And we don't hear a ton of these stories on the internet, but it is just as valid and just as relevant a reason to learn or not learn or otherwise interact with a language the way that you want. Language learning tips and acquisition can only get you so far. You are truly your best kept secret for reaching fluency, success, and confidence. Make sure to subscribe if you are interested in the more emotional side of language learning and how that can skyrocket your journey. Meanwhile, check out this next video for more language confidence here.